Philadelphia getting their revenge after the win over the Chiefs last night, so no surprise they remain on top. But check out the next four teams, guys. The Lions with the turnaround of the century. They're up to number 2, followed by the Cowboys, who became the latest team to take down the Panthers. The Chiefs dropped to 4, and the 49ers getting back to business after their bye. They've now won 2 straight and moved to number 5. Meanwhile, it's a party in the Mile High City. Denver, the biggest positive mover this week. They're up 6 spots after beating the Vikings. And after a loss to the Packers and Brandon Staley's meltdown in the post-game press conference, the Chargers fall to 4-6, and they also fall 7 spots in Pete's power rankings. So with that, let's get to some fresh takes brought to you by Fresh Pet. It's not dog food, it's food. As we welcome in the guys, Pete Prisco and Brady Quinn. Pete, some interesting rankings this week. I'm very happy with number 3. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, let's start right there with that number 1 team. The Eagles stay on top after that win last night. It feels kind of like an obvious question, but what keeps them at number 1?
The record and the winning games. But you know what's interesting about the Eagles? They've won a lot of close games. A year ago, the Minnesota Vikings won a lot of close games, and everybody said, oh, they're not very good. Now the Eagles are winning a lot of close games. Everybody goes, oh, that's a sign of a good football team. You can't have it both ways.
Are you saying they're not very good?
No, I'm saying they're very good, but they're not as good. Is that what you just said? I will say I don't think they're as good as they were a year ago. Okay. I think there's a lot of things missing from them right now.
What's missing?
The quarterback's not playing as well, throwing the football. He hit some shots in the second half. I'll give him that. I think the outside corners, the secondary people aren't very good. We saw some open receivers who didn't catch the football, and that's been a problem all year. So I just don't think they got run on too, which was a surprise last night.
Gave up some pressure as well.
Yeah. I just think there's some issues there at play. You don't agree? You think they're as good as they were a year ago?
Yeah, I want to hear from you.
I think there's not any team that's as good as anyone was a year ago. I feel like we haven't seen the dominance that we saw last year in the NFL, not only from the Eagles, but probably from the Chiefs too. So I think that's been the most interesting thing that I've taken away from this season. Maybe you call it more parity. Maybe it's teams kind of just adapting to losing some players in free agency or trades. But I don't know that we've seen any team be as dominant as some of the dominance that we saw last year, in particular from Philadelphia. They are the best team, though, in the NFL. They play every single series, it seems like, in 1st and 9 on offense, which is pretty impressive when you think about how effective they've been in short yardage and the advantage that gives them. But more than that, I think they found different ways of winning. The addition of Kevin Byard obviously played a role in last night's game, and it has and will continue this season. So they're still the best team. They will be until someone's able to knock them off, at least at this point. But I would say this, if you're looking at your power rankings, the NFC, to me, I think is going to be the most difficult path to navigate, given some of the top teams that we're talking about in the league right now, once we do get to the playoffs.
I mean,
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, you see that top 5 in your power rankings. It's a lot of NFC, so good point there, Brady. Let's talk about the other side of that game, though, the Kansas City Chiefs, because they felt untouchable for so many of the last couple of seasons. Now you look at them, they haven't scored over 21 points in, 3 weeks now? The offense is just kind of missing something, Brady. How would you evaluate this Chiefs roster right now?
They're just missing the ability for someone to step up and make the play outside of Travis Kelce. I mean, that's what it is. And unfortunately for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, it was him last night, and it was one particular play, even though you can comb through the game and look at different things.
Justin Watson had a couple, too.
Watson as well had a number of drops, and even some of the officiating. Okay, the first touchdown to Kelce, look, that's OPI.
There was a hold on the one touchdown.
There was a hold on the other touchdown for Swift. I mean, either way, you can make a bunch of cases as to what's happened in some of these games. The officiating has been terrible. That said about the Chiefs, they haven't had that guy to emerge outside of Kelce. However, we still got a lot of football left to be played. You know, someone can emerge, someone can become the guy. I will say this, every time I watch Patrick Mahomes, I'm reminded he is the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. He gives them a chance to win every single game. He is special. There's no other way of putting it. And Pete, you've said this all year. We've talked about this a lot. The most consistent part of the team is their defense. And that's where I think if they do win another Super Bowl, it'll be because of that combination of not Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, because of Patrick Mahomes and the defense.
Well, Travis Kelce can't fumble inside the 10-yard line either. That game's done. If he go in and get a touchdown there, I think that game's over.
We can make a lot of cases for it. If Valdes-Scantling catches it, that game's over.
Or if the ball's better thrown, he catches it.
Better thrown.
Yeah. But the drops have been pretty consistent all season. I mean, at first in that first game against the Lions, we were kind of surprised at the amount of drops, but it's been a reoccurring theme for them this year.
Most in the league. I mean, and again, it goes to how they're taking away Travis Kelce at times, and then who's going to step up, who's going to be more consistent. They haven't found that guy yet.
They've scored the fewest points of any team in the league in the second half. That's lower than, like, think about that, how bad some of these offenses are. The Giants, the Jets, they've scored fewer points than any. That's amazing.
Which, again, you look at adjustments. You know, we act like all the adjustments happen when halftime, when the coaches have time to get together. They happen throughout the course of the game, but that's the scary thing is it's been consistent enough now where you're saying they're not making enough second half adjustments. And I don't know what you attribute that to.
Well, it's certainly going to be an issue if they're going to try and compete in the league going forward. Let's talk about the AFC North, though, guys. Just kidding. We're going to look at the drop
here. This is the ball that could have been thrown better, apparently, to Pete Prisco.
Well, I mean, he could have caught it in stride.
Are you serious right now? You didn't think that was in stride?
It's not a bad throw. I didn't say it was a bad throw. I said it could have just been a little bit better.
Wow. You're saying that the throw from Patrick Mahomes.
This is an all-timer. This is an all-timer from Pete Prisco.
No,
this is an all-timer from Pete Prisco.
He should have caught the ball.
You thought that ball could need to be thrown better.
It could have been thrown better, but he should have caught it.
All right.
All right. Well, we'll split hairs on that.
Your eyesight's going bad.
No,
I want you to know that.
He could have caught it in stride.
Go get LASIK.
He was outstretched.
Can we get a LASIK sponsor the next time for Pete Prisco? I think it'd be great coming to these
Let me write that down really quick.
I can see a bunch of garbage coming out of your mouth right now.
Let's pivot here, guys. Let's talk about the AFC North. Pete, you have the Ravens one spot behind the Browns. The Browns did get a win this week with Dorian Thompson-Robinson behind center. It wasn't a pretty game, as you wrote in your recap, but what is keeping them ahead of the Ravens, especially when you look at the season the Ravens have had?
Well, they beat them.
They split this season. They're divisional opponents, Pete.
They beat them a couple weeks ago.
And they don't have Deshaun Watson, who went perfect in the second half.
Right, but was he playing good football? Was he playing good football?
That was his best half of football he's played. They won the second half because of Deshaun Watson. He's not there anymore.
The Ravens haven't looked as good on defense the past couple weeks. I think when you look at this team, if Joe Burrow plays in that game and finishes that game, he goes up and down the field.
They're the top seed right now in the AFC.
I agree, but I think Cleveland deserves the right. They went there 2 weeks ago.
It's a fact. They're the top seed right now.
They went there and beat them 2 weeks ago.
I understand, and Baltimore beat them early in the season.
Right. What's the edge, though, that you're seeing with the Browns? So just the defense.
The defense is better. And I didn't think that about a month ago, but now I do. I think their defense is better.
It's marginally better. I would take Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, though, if they played a third time.
Okay.
Fair enough?
They haven't earned the right to be in that spot.
Yeah, and
so far.
This division has been wild this year. I talked with Evan Washburn yesterday because he's been covering the Browns all season, and you talk about which team can go and which team is playing well in 1 week, but looking at the AFC North standings, guys, I mean, it doesn't really get much closer than this.
It doesn't. I mean, I think you could see for sure 2 teams, maybe 3 make it to the playoffs. The Bengals are out. At 500 right now, no Joe Burrow. I just don't think they can overcome that loss given what he brings to that team. Now, Pittsburgh's the interesting one now because they've moved on from Matt Canada. And now we get to see potentially what Mike Sullivan, the running backs coach, can put together offensively if they can open things up. If they can, this is a team that I think is good enough defensively and with enough playmakers to find their way into the playoffs as well as a wild card team. I don't think they can catch Baltimore necessarily, but I do think they're going to be a team that ends up factoring into the wild card spot.
I agree. I mean, you look around the AFC and who else is going to be factoring into that? I mean,
well, the Houston and Jacksonville.
One of those two teams
as well.
Yeah.
And then I think the AFC West, we'll see what kind of happens out there with Denver making a charge.
Yeah, what in the world?
Yeah, it's crazy.
All right, so we've talked a lot about your top 10 teams, Pete. Let's take a look at the next 10 on that list. As you see, the Seahawks, the Bills slowly creeping up maybe into that top 10, depending on how the season is going. But number 14, you see the Steelers there, kind of on the outside looking in. We know that they have officially fired offensive coordinator Matt Canada after a forgettable offensive season so far. Before we talk about this, guys, I want to get to head coach Mike Tomlin, who spoke about it this morning.
I just want to see points. I want to engineer victory more fluidly, and points do that. Now, the biggest crux of it was results. The results speak for themselves, man. We're in a result-oriented business. I often say, football is our game, our business is winning. We weren't winning enough and fluidly enough, and that's just the reality of it.
So no more Matt Canada in charge of the offense. It'll be Mike Sullivan who's calling the plays. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Giants. And then you also have running backs coach Eddie Faulkner, who will officially take over for offensive coordinating duties. Brady, I'll go to you first on this because we've talked weeks and weeks and weeks about how poor the Steelers offense has been. Do you think this helps?
It's actually been probably the past couple of seasons now, and it's really started back in 2021 when Matt Canada took over. Ben Roethlisberger started to have some complaints at his final season as the Steelers starting quarterback, and it leaked into last year, where this offense has continually gotten worse. 23rd in the league the prior 2 years, this year 28th. And you're looking at saying, where's the creativity? Where's the innovation? They have playmakers, they have stars, they have the ability to open things up. Kenny Pickett's even athletic enough to incorporate more quarterback run game from time to time. And unfortunately, you don't see any of that in this offense week after week after week. So, look, I'm not necessarily sure they'll be able to open things up all of a sudden in the middle of the season like this when it's Matt Canada's offense. But I do think they're probably going to take some more shots. We'll get a better chance to see what Kenny Pickett is truly capable of.
Well, that's what we're going to find out. Is Kenny Pickett any good? I mean, that's the reality, because it's hard to judge him based on what we've seen so far. Now we will get a chance to really judge him. I liked him coming out. He hasn't played to that, but we'll see. Now we get a true evaluation. And number two, this is the first time the Steelers have made an in-season firing since 1941.
Wow.
1941, and I think that...
How old were you back then?
I was covering the league then, by the way. I was, and I remember the firing. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the owner who fired himself as an assistant coach.
Sometimes you got to take yourself away from the situation. Really quick, guys, before we pop to break, Evan Washburn told us a story about Jaylen Warren yesterday, how he never takes his helmet off on the sidelines. We know the run game for the Steelers has been kind of the crux there for them. Do you think Jaylen Warren can kind of help fix that? What have you seen out of him, Brady?
He ran well last week. I mean, he had the big long run and kind of created at least better numbers the way it looked. But Najee Harris clearly had an issue with the offensive play calling. Some people think that's what sparked all of this, even though people have been calling for it for a period of time. And look, I think they're going to have to continue to keep feeding Warren and Najee Harris the football in some different ways outside of Pickens and then Freiermuth, now that he's back healthy, Deontay Johnson. Like, those are your playmakers. And they've got to figure out more creative ways of getting them the football in ways that play to their strengths. You don't see that very often with the way this offense is operated. So the running game is going to be a big piece of it, but I think how they go about getting these players touches is the other part.
I think Warren brings more juice. I think he has more juice than Harris does, and I think they got to start. You're right. They have to start using him. Get him outside in the passing game. Get him the
Use them both.
Right.
Use Najee and Jaylen Warren both. Najee is a good pass catching option. You have them both in the backfield. It can be a tough matchup.
All right, there you go. Our guys, Brady and Pete, breaking things down for us in the world of the NFL. And listen, if Pete's power rankings aren't enough for you, you can tap into the Pick Six podcast with Will Brinson and the crew. A fresh new episode just dropped yesterday. It features a crew of betting experts to give you an early look at the lines, odds, and your best bets heading into Week 12. The Pick Six podcast can be found by scanning that QR code on your screen or wherever you get your audio.